Hi guys, thank you very much for seeing me. Polina here. I'm talking to you about this very interesting solar eclipse and the new moon, of course, in Cancer. And it is also conjunct the North Node and almost conjunct Venus. I mean, we got a huge deliberate creation waiting to be born. We've got a big unkind cycle potentially at its edge or on its last legs. We have perhaps a perfection waiting to be unveiled or even to be endured, because sometimes these types of times are painful but also very blissful. It is a bittersweet time. It is a sugary and also a sour and a salty time. It's got many flavors in one. It's got many feelings in one. We are in the master of creative thinking and feeling sign of Cancer. We're going through a very incredible Jupiterian reform with this Jupiter retrograde and a very intense aspect to the beautiful fellow communicative Piscean Neptune. And yes, all of this to me represents the time that has begun. The time that has begun. The other vortexes aside, the previous dreams concluded, the time that has begun, who you have been with for the last few weeks, what has been surfacing again and again in the mind, also in the heart, repetitive patterns of trust, repetitive patterns of home, repetitive patterns of nurture. Repetition has been a huge one for us in Gemini, as Gemini brings in many the idea of being here on this planet, the idea of being Earth itself personified as a human being has to change. And those of us that have very strong rock and roll ideas about how to or why to do things in our world have to start, there's a dog, have to start really knocking at the door of life in a brand new way. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that we've got a certainty and a need to reform and reconnect to a brand new diverse level of freedom, brand new diversity, and a brand new kind of unity that only this type of time provides. We have a simplicity also at our table. We have something that is so simple and so true that previously perhaps was a conundrum. So we've got an unveiled part of our lives right in front of us. We perhaps have got a ball of yarn that is no longer so tight and complex. We perhaps have already that one person for some of us. Yes, ladies, perhaps you have finally unveiled your true mate or the true potential mate or lover. And yes, for some gentlemen also, I believe masculine the masculine refining itself into a greater quantum with very strong Jupiterian revival and revision of the masculine lines. And here we have a very interesting new conundrum coming up, as I believe this eclipse, any eclipse will usually provide, is the recognizing of the slamming shut of certain type of opportunities, certain doors and certain adventures that will not any longer be. And that represents a certain type of shutting down of a certain type of masculine or feminine archetype, certain type of rhythm in life, certain type of behavioral relationship pattern, and especially anything of the heart, also in the home and in the body, because Cancer to me represents no longer perhaps the physical finite home, but also actually the home in which we live and the planetary relationship to ourselves. The finite, the uncomfortable is starting to become very obvious now, and to me it looks like these doors are so easy to shut now. It's like I don't even have any time for this, and the door just slides open and slides shut as if by itself. I feel that some of us will have to see something ugly come through. If you're somebody with eczema or any kind of acne issues or any kind of skin irritations or perhaps even breast cancer or anything to do with the flesh, especially tumors and things that appear on the outside or make you feel very uncomfortable, make you feel very irritated, all of these things will start to open up and show themselves, sometimes just in time to either resolve themselves for some people or to be resolved by a doctor or a therapist. So we have a certain type of release of all traumas and all stagnations and a reconfinement as well, because we are in Cancer. It is not really the most open of signs. We have an interesting closing of doors. I feel that we have to now understand what is good and what was not ever perhaps good enough for us. And what I mean by reconfinement is that there is a certain type of safety and a new type of unveiling and unraveling of what is right, what is real, what is true for you. I also believe this type of time can subjectify, confine, and even on some level demonize or segregate certain parts of us. Also, don't be afraid to be that person, the one that is out of the group, the one that is out of the scene, the one that is out of someone's life, or that is just out of a job or out of a certain type of situation, simply because we need these times. Because sometimes to be confined or segregated means that you have a new perhaps wave of knowledge coming, or you have a new vibrancy, you have a new lifestyle, you just have a new feeling about you. And maybe you are on your own. If you are one of those people that is confined, locked out, or taken out of situations, you could be one of those very, very actually lucky people, because some of us that are confined, that are put away, or that find ourselves in a state of irrelevance are actually at the brink of something greater and more nurturing than before. So sometimes the bigger the door that is shut, the larger the door that will open. It is not entirely true for all people. For some people it might be a beginning of a big journey or a big end, or a journey of endings. And I see that some of us might find a lot of crash and sorrow, especially if we've been irritated, irritative, irrational, strong-minded, very sugary, very sweet, very sour about certain things. If we've been very, very intense and emotional, or we got intense emotive patterns in a home, or we pretend to have certain emotions to sway other people or sway ourselves into certain types of situations. And if we are irrationally emotional during this particular type of eclipse, you might actually get these things coming to the surface so fast and so quick that you might not even stand yourself. And it's a very interesting way to see yourself much lighter and much larger than previous when you recognize that these patterns are not you. If you're now already facing patterns of behavior or situations that are just like they're just too much, or they don't mean that much to you anymore, or maybe you are finding the meaningless language that you use, or meaningless words, as Mercury now is in Leo, so we're progressing forward and past certain emotional waves or emotional states and emotionalities and ways of expression. You might want to start to safeguard yourself from doing certain things too fast or too much, and look at you and see what's yours and perhaps what is not you. And for some people it might be just as simple as what's on your plate and what's in your wardrobe and how you identify and what you stick to, as Cancer is something that is a sticky energy, and sometimes it sticks things in a bundle. And though we may not know it, also Cancer in the body, Cancer in the flesh, the disease that is Cancer, is also the process of bundling, sticking together, and making groups or groupings of things that perhaps are not quite well thought out or justified. So please have a look. If you're not feeling well, how can you ungroup? How can you release? And how can you just basically shake free from any kind of tight, sticky situation or conundrum that perhaps is not yours? Identifying identities. Identity is a sour little crisis here. An identity of sorts can be a means to an end for some people, and for some others it can actually be a very confining energy. Please be aware, please be sure, as I'm actually also going through this. If you are in the process of hanging out, doing things for others, if you are making sense, if you are making pacts, if you are making language, fireworks, with people, if you are doing things with each other that you don't confine you to a very, very specific primary color. So what I mean is that when you do things like that, you might actually figure it out that this is yours when it's not. Also defining and determining yourself and other people, deterring you or other people, or pushing yourself or other people against their will, especially against your own will. You know, when it comes to recognition, identity, and any kind of other type of disorder, because one of the largest phenomena that has taken place for me recently, sorry about the fireworks, is recognizing actually that identity is a false basis, because as we grow into an identification, we actually usually become on a level biased, and as you trust the biased spectrum that you have developed, or you feel you have developed, and usually these are egregores that throughout space and time develop themselves as familiarity-based entities, you might actually trust those entities more than you trust yourself, and thus in any kind of culture, for example LGBTQA culture and other cultures, like especially associated with certain type of youth movements and things like that, or certain types of religious beliefs and other disorders, you might find that there is a certain egregore that takes place within these particular pseudonyms, or these particular role plays that people put together in any given collective, in any given space and time, that eventually devolve the human aspect of oneself, and evolve the justice and injustice of the egregore. So they evolve almost like the bacterial petri dish of these types of emotions, without actually helping us heal ourselves. So please have a look. If you are on the path of devolution, as I have also recently found myself through any type of identification or identifiable source, if you're starting to comply, if you're starting to sign yourself away, if you're starting to navigate through any particular rhythm or scene, or any kind of adventure that could probably be seen as an archetypal or identity-based adventure, please reconsider. Simply because out of these types of references to yourself as one of many, or yourself as one of a scene, a club, or a culture, you might actually start to reform your soul in a spectrum that it provides, without really looking at your own natural human place. And this means that anything to do with culture, anything that is to do with family tradition, and all that mumbo jumbo in terms of being part of a certain clan that only does things a certain way, please try to find space, even if you're very staunch, very tight with these people, to redefine and to start to no longer play on these particular notes. And why those notes are very, very important to recognize, why these themes are very, very important to recognize for us now, is that these particular types of doors are very sealing doors. And that means that if you are finding yourself within an identity crisis later on in life, if you are, looking as to why things went a certain way, like how you perhaps started a certain drug habit, or a certain type of health habit, or a certain type of lifestyle habit, or even determination, these are the types of windows that sometimes make these habits for a very long time. But one of the best, most greatest focusing energies during this time is just earth and the blueprint of your soul. So what I mean is just meditation, quantum alignment, through breath, through just being yourself, just being here, walking around, using your body, playing a sport if you enjoy to play a sport recreationally, without giving it too much thought, no clubs, no systems if possible, just basic human things. Human needs, very nice time to adjust your habits, very nice time to stop drinking, for example, alcohol, and start to detox. Very beautiful time to stop and no longer supply yourself with certain things, certain media, or certain information, and to actually start to grow up and out of certain difficulties and differences, and especially these types of demographics and subcultures that are based on difference and based on pragmatism and based on religious or political, matriarchal, patriarchal, or like anti-views. You might actually find that these particular these particular vibes are not what you think they are, and they can actually be something that cannot be helpful to you, even though it might give you pride or might give you strength. Basically, this is not just about conformity or affirmations or putting yourself in a box. It is actually more about you and how you recognize you within you. And that means that there is no true justice found within or without. It is just basically being free. And if you can imagine, this is a very important visual here I'm sort of seeing. If you can imagine, everything is kind of like a web. We are in the sign of Fascia. We are in the natural house of the moon and the earth, actually. We are here in Cancer. We are in the home, the house. We are in the most giving and most sincere sign of all, to really understand how everything works in its own natural wave. And also to realize that the best fascia, the best system, the best webbing, the best netting for your life, or the best structure of the system, or the support for your life, is the one that does not choke you, but also the one that supports. It's like this. Okay, so basically, if you can, like, close your eyes. I've not done this before, I'm just channeling this. Close your eyes and see your life as a beautiful, beautiful, amazing system of web. And here we have, yes, the moon in its native house of Cancer, reformed, revised, closed and opened, shut down and reviewed. So we have a beautiful redefinition of the feminine and the masculine, and also very, very good, vibing, healthy, healing time to really realize what does and does not put us together. So here, as you are sitting with your eyes closed, perhaps it's a very nice time to relax and relate. And as you relax and you relate and breathe easy, let it go and let it out, and allow and trust the system that is there for you, that is supportive of what you do and who you are, to stay. And these edges and uncomfortable momentums and irregular vibrations that are not supporting you and are not actually holding you at all, to come away and to maybe show to yourself, show who you are. And also, perhaps, as you show yourself who you are, without these distrusts of what does and does not support you, what does and does not love you, what does and does not function in your life, try to see, as you see who you are, which should just be a wholehearted smile, who you are when you feel you. And as you feel you, and as you just feel as you are, especially during this very, very auspicious transit of the moon at the moment, actually, please try to see how you feel about anything that comes up on your mind. So you don't need to here control the mind into submission. Just basically allow it to bring up a person or a situation or a theme or a structure or a material position, anything in your mind, and just see how you feel about it. Maybe you feel very good about it. Maybe you feel maybe not so interested. And please also feel joy. For example, in the last year and a half or so, you felt extreme excitement about something, and now it is no longer interesting, because the moon will create pessimism. This type of moon will create unlikability and maybe feeling of things being drab. Let that be fine. Let that be good. Allow yourself to allow things that are drab now and that are no longer a worry or no longer interesting or no longer taking you anywhere, to be that, and celebrate that you perhaps now have a change of values and a change of heart, because it is very likely that this moon is going to bring an unconscious shift in consciousness so vast and so mindful that, yes, as it is a 12th house to Leo, it will create a big shift in the global heart and perhaps in the global community too. So you can open your eyes if you still have them closed. I really enjoyed that, actually. It made me feel very good. If you would like, please to have a look as to what brings you joy. Maybe there are 2 or 3 people that are coming through now that actually do. What makes you feel spark? What makes you feel also sparse? Where did you see yourself going before that now makes you yawn? What did you wear? What did you have? What possessions or things did you supply yourself earlier? What did you contribute to that now you cannot any longer take? And also, please let it be as it be. You in yourself, with this very native moon conjunct to the sun, you in yourself already know, also with Venus so close to this conjunction, how come you don't feel anything about certain things. You yourself already know how come you do feel certain things. And also here, because Venus is so close to the moon, though she is lagging behind still in the last degree here, in the last degrees of Gemini, please have a look as to how your heart, how your soul, and how your attraction spectrum has now perhaps evolved or maybe devolved, or has changed, or seems to be going through a transitional phase. And applaud yourself for that, because as we have Venus going into the dark sign of Cancer, feminine sign of Cancer, we have the ending perhaps, and a new reform spectrum, or a new kind of like perhaps for some survival spectrum, but for most of us I feel reformative spectrum of the heart. And thus perhaps also on this level, as Venus is no longer opposing Jupiter, I believe that we might now create what we have come to really want to. And also because we have a very, very, very amazing, once in a lifetime support system coming our way, or once in a lifetime connection perhaps during a window like this, or once in a lifetime theme. It will be so good for all of us to really celebrate whoever we are, however we've come out of this particular cycle, or however we will come out of this moon in the days to come, and appreciate what was wrong perhaps that is now right, and who was not perhaps there or really truly connected to no longer linger, and to really, really, really surprise ourselves perhaps as to where our hearts, where our minds, where our saturations or emotionalities were actually going, and how come we haven't seen that yet, as this moon does kind of brush by the Venus and does go towards the North Node here. It feels to me that irrationality, emotionality, sexuality, sensuality will eventually show us something new. And we have to also recognize or realize on some level during this particular time what it was, who it was, how it was, why it was that we were taking so much time complicating things. Well, we could have made it very easy, especially if you're now becoming a ball of yarn, no longer tight or no longer scrambled. You know, if you are starting to unwind yourself into a nice sort of tapestry of life, and if also the previous months you've organized your diet, you've organized your life, you organized your self, you have created new versions of you, or like a better sense of your own self. And by now it's very, very nice and kind to close those doors where you're still waiting for that answer, you're still waiting for that email, you're still waiting for that guy, or you're still waiting for that lady, where you can kind of tell that there is no even echo anymore. So before, you know, it felt like you are yelling down the hallway and there was an echo, there was a door, and it was about to open. But now, for us, especially with this very, very, very super auspicious stellium here, we might no longer wait. And it's important to know also, if you are playing games with people, yeah, and you really enjoy the idea of them waiting for you, you really love the feeling of them not being available or you being unavailable, please stop playing games, because some of us will move on, and we'll move on radically fast. We have this Mars and Mercury conjunct. You know, the sun is heading that way. And also the moon will be there very, very quick. So by the 3rd or 4th, you might find it super, super eloquent, super, super fast and easy to say what you want to say, to tell the world how you feel, and also to move on past the previous dimension very, very quickly into the next. And yeah, also unfortunate for some and very fortunate for others, dimensions of love can shift, tastes in relationships can change, and also older lovers can come back also for some of us, and for good. It is a very, very interesting reformative time. So if you are not sure, if you are still uncomfortable about who you are, where you are, what you look like, where you belong, you know, if you feel awkward about yourself, if you are not happy about your body, especially your form, if you're still ashamed about your family, if you still haven't figured out your issues, it is not so good right now to rummage through all of that stuff and try to fish it all out. But what we can do is just basically breathe through it and trust the process of change. And if you like, keep a journal. It's also a very, very good, powerful time for big, powerful words and speeches. And it's very, very beautiful, positive, and very amazing, dominating, even dominant time to write down a few words about how you think and feel. So it's like, yeah, okay, so this person, for example, was part of my mind, part of these loops in my mind for the last 3 or 4 years. Right now, I cannot even feel, think, or believe that this was possible. Write it down, or like say, I've been out, as a queer person for such a long time, but I've actually met somebody of the opposite gender and I'm falling in love, or vice versa. And it would be so nice for you to write these things down and imagine them as a beautiful, surreal novel, or like a beautiful, decadent, loving film or artwork. You don't have to stagnate on this as a certain type of disembellishment of your creativity or your character. If you are now thinking something that, say, 2 years ago you were not thinking or not aware of, if you're now finding something inside you as a person, especially you as a character of your own life, that previously was a mystery, please consider how you can be at peace with that. Because if you are not at peace with it, and if you are not feeling lucky, and if you're not feeling lovely, and you're not feeling at all supported or supportive of who you are yourself, I believe it's going to be a very, very tough ride. So if you can, try to smooth out all the edges. Don't argue with other people. Don't try to make other people understand who you are, who you were, or what you were going towards. Don't make any fuss about what other people are doing or have done. You don't need to make any fuss about us, like how people are, what are the different movements and motions. It is so nice to understand that it's all up to you, and in a sense you are the greatest face, or you are the greatest, kindest and most able human at your point of evolution right now, and that you trust your senses, you trust your guidance system, you trust your love, you trust your heart, you trust your openness to the world to bring out the best in all of us through just being the best version of you. Best version of you. Okay, so yeah, versions of me. So love letters to myself. I just wanted to advertise this book. I've done this book. I love it. It's kind of like a little bit of a it's a very loving book. This is like yeah, very, very nice book. It's a book of poems. It is a book of poems that I wrote to myself. It is a coming out of sorts. Like I talk about my gender and my sexuality, my sexual identity. If you like this book, you might like me more. If you don't like this book, you might not like who I am after all, if you do follow me as a person, not just as a reader. But yeah, it's got very nice illustrations. They're all created out of selfies and parts of my body, like these hands. And yes, these are very, very mindfully crafted poems that I've written in a certain type of algorithm to basically help explore the inner dimensions of my psyche and the inner blueprint of my heart, as I talk about anything from sexuality to gender to genitals to self-identity to love and devotion to family and all those other things. This is one of my poetry books. I am currently sort of thinking about writing another one as the poems keep on coming. So if you like my rhyming stanza, if you enjoy my rhymes, as I started out as a channel through rhyming, please check out this book. I will have everything in the caption section below. If you have got the time. Also, if you're in New York City, maybe have a look. It's a good chance to meet me in person. I'll be here for the next 2 months. I'm staying in Brooklyn. I can travel. If you'd like a reading, let me know. If you'd like, have a look at my Patreon. I will be doing 12 tiny videos for each sign. So if you're curious about what this month means for you, have a look. And I hope that you enjoy this incredible dimensional shift. Thanks.